Welcome to the Arkham Sessions. I'm Brian Ward.
I'm Dr. Andrea Letamendi.
Andrea, congratulations.
Thank you.
We've just come off of not only the biggest week in the show's history, but also the biggest month so far. And last week, we also scored our 10,000th download.
Woohoo! What does that mean? I have no idea.
That means we're gaining a lot of new listeners, but more importantly, they're actually enjoying the show enough to listen to multiple episodes. So there are a lot of people interested in what makes Batman and his villains tick. And not only that, we're being regularly emailed and tweeted about how your analysis in particular of these characters is helping people grasp these real-life states of mind and, in some cases, disorders, whether it's for them or family members or friends. And
yeah, that's, I think for me, that's what matters. So I do sometimes pay attention to the numbers of downloads and listens, and I know that's important to make sure we keep going, but I do like to get the Twitter messages and the emails from the website, asking questions, talking about how the show has helped them, and generally just sort of giving feedback about the impact that this show has. So that's been great.
Yeah, because ultimately the whole point of this show is really to help people understand better, mental health. And, I enjoy getting that kind of feedback. It, makes me feel good. So we've got a lot more to discuss in these coming episodes. So definitely stick around. You're going to like what you hear for sure. Drea, I also recently saw that you were quoted in an article on CNN.com.
That's right. So, of course, this is the 75th year anniversary of Batman. So, of course, DC Comics and some news outlets are celebrating as well. And CNN recently posted a story about the influence of Batman and how Batman and his story has stood the test of time. And I was interviewed and asked about why I thought Batman is relatable and has impacted so many people and continues to be an important character, if you will, in our culture. So if you're interested, I do talk about the psychology of Batman and how Batman's origin story is important in our ability to relate and identify with him. And it's a really great piece. So you can find that on CNN.com.
There's only one person that I thought was missing from that article, and that was Phoenix Jones.
Oh, yes.
The real-life vigilante, costumed vigilante, who must have been influenced by Batman in some way, right?
Well, but see, that I don't know. That's kind of an assumption. I know his costume is a bit Dark Knight-ish, but I don't know if I've ever heard him in interviews say that Batman is the one who's influenced him to patrol the streets and take justice into his own hands.
We're going to take a look. We're going to find it. We're going to see.
All right.
So let's get to The Cat in the Claw, Part 1. This was an episode written by Jules Dennis and Richard Mueller from a story by Sean Catherine Derrick and Laren Bright, and it was directed by Kevin Altieri. It first aired on September 5th, 1992. And this episode introduces us to two characters, Catwoman and the Red Claw. Now, Catwoman we all know and love. Selina Kyle, introduced in 1940 with Batman #1. At the time, she was simply known as the Cat. And she was your typical run-of-the-mill cat burglar. In her first story, she was after a diamond necklace worth $500,000, if I remember correctly. And she's disguised as an old woman. Once Batman figures her out, he removes the old lady makeup in a pretty hilarious panel, actually. I'm sure you've seen it. It's him rubbing her face, and she says something like, let go of me or get off of me. And Batman classically responds, quiet or Papa Spank.
No.
Things have changed. 75 years of Batman.
Yeah, 1940. The good old days, right?
Yeah.
So that was Catwoman's introduction in the books, and her character actually did pretty well until about 1954 when she sort of disappeared, mostly due to the Comics Code Authority. And, they were very picky about the representation of women in comics. So you didn't see as much Catwoman after that. But her character really came back with a vengeance with the 1966 TV series. And, of course, you can pick your favorite Catwoman from that series. You had Julie Newmar, you had Lee Merriweather, you had Eartha Kitt, and her character's just grown in popularity since. Catwoman in this particular series is voiced by Adrienne Barbeau of Swamp Thing and The Fog fame. By the way, I don't do this very often, but if you're a fan of either of those movies, directed by Wes Craven and John Carpenter, respectively, you can pick up the fantastic Blu-rays from Shout Factory.
That's right.
Just a little plug. Really, they're both great discs, lots of bonus features, including interviews with Miss Barbeau. The Red Claw, on the other hand, made her debut appearance in The Cat in the Claw Part 1. Yes, this episode introduced this villainess, voiced by Kate Mulgrew, who many listening to the podcast probably know as Captain Catherine Janeway from Star Trek Voyager, or more recently as Red from Orange is the New Black. And the Red Claw is basically the leader of a terrorist group simply known as Red Claw. We open this episode with Catwoman scaling a wall, and we see a sleeping woman. Clearly she's filthy rich because, Catwoman is interested. And Isis the cat climbs through a hole in the glass window, of course created by Catwoman's razor-sharp claw, and steals a jeweled necklace through a highly sophisticated laser security system. Here's the thing about this little moment. It's suggested that Isis can see the laser security system, which has created a bit of a fence around the necklace. We've all seen this sort of thing done. And because she can see it, she can move through it and grab the necklace without tripping the alarm. The security system that's being used uses photoelectric beams, and we can't see it, so it's likely infrared. So here's the question, Drea. Can the cat really see these beams?
Oh, yes. Probably. I don't know. It's doubtful.
The answer is we don't know. Yes, cats do have better night vision than humans. This is generally thought because of the higher density of rods. And basically they allow more light, which lets them see better in the dark. But there was actually a study done last year at City University London that suggests that cats may actually be able to see infrared light. So, I don't know, it's possible the cat can see the light that's invisible to us, but many would still say it's probably unlikely. The better question I would ask is, how did Selena train Isis to avoid the beams? Because my cat, Anya, I could train her to see the light all day, but she just wouldn't.
Yeah, well, probably some behavioral modification, which could include some rewards. And, I doubt Catwoman would be punishing little Isis for messing up, but,
Although she is jumping around, that cat has got to be terrified when Catwoman's doing her acrobatics and Isis is just kind of hanging out on her.
So there are moments where Catwoman is jumping from building to building, and Isis is just sort of hanging out on her shoulder, and it's kind of really cool to see. But yeah, the cat is clearly accustomed to this lifestyle.
Yeah, although there is one frame or a couple of frames in the animation where Catwoman does her little flip and then lands on the rooftop nearby, and Isis looks a little freaked out. But regardless, Batman watches as Catwoman leaves, and the chase is on. Isis is ultimately nearly hit by an oncoming truck. And Batman, of course, saves her. But once Isis is reunited with her owner, Catwoman blows Batman a kiss. And unlike normal, Batman doesn't continue the pursuit.
Well, it seems like he has some evidence. He pulls what could be a claw from his cape. And
yeah, because she ripped the cape.
Thanks for the memento.
Yeah, so I guess he's got enough. But most people, I think, he would probably pursue her a little bit more. But maybe he wants a second shot at her.
I think he's interested in looking into the evidence and learning more about her, via technology and a computer. I think he's done chasing her for now.
Yeah, that's that antisocial part probably again. He's dying to get back to his lab and his computer. He's like, interesting girl. I gotta let this one go for now. It's too much to handle. We then cut to a scene where we find Bruce Wayne up for auction for a charity. The bidding starts at $5.
It's so low. It starts. Sorry, I
was thinking that actually started pretty high.
It starts so low, $500 for Bruce Wayne.
Well, but if you think about eligible bachelor charity auctions like this, typically they try to give at least. But maybe the reasonable chance that that Jane Doe can afford Bruce Wayne.
But this is Gotham City.
It's true.
And it's Bruce Wayne. So you would think they would at least start at $1,000, if not $5,000.
No, because now you're just proving that everyone in the room is hoity-toity and better than us. Like, I think this is for charity. You try to get as much as possible, but you start at a reasonable... Plus, I will say this. You start the bidding low. Mm-hmm. And it becomes that much more impressive at the final number. Like if you started at $1 and it ends at $500, wow, that was impressive. But I don't know. I think you start it low, get the bidding going.
I think the truth is the only person that can truly afford Bruce Wayne is Bruce Wayne.
Well, that's possible, except...
500, 600.
We have 6. Do I hear 7?
700. 8. 1,000.
$10,000.
Selina Kyle. Bruce is absolutely blown away by this woman. A sophisticated, clearly rich, because, you know, she can just blow $10,000 on a date with Bruce Wayne. Mm-hmm. This blonde woman. And she's less enamored by Bruce.
She doesn't seem to be interested in...
Please understand, it's purely for the animals, Mr. Wayne. You're off the hook.
You know, she's basically telling him she's not interested in the date. Meanwhile, he is interested in the date, and he's like, no, like, you're not getting off. Or maybe you are. Or maybe you're not.
Maybe we'll be later. I don't know.
But he's, it's a weird moment because he blushes and it's like very uncomfortable if you're watching this, just in the sense that he is very interested in her and she's sort of not interested in him. And I don't know, you don't see Bruce Wayne getting all verklempt and
right.
blushing and wanting to romantically pursue someone. So.
Yeah, that seemed interesting to me. What is it about Selina Kyle that gets Bruce Wayne?
She's very different than other women in Gotham City. And I think, at least, you know, of course, up till this episode, we've not seen Bruce Wayne really be romantically interested in any woman. He's not like this. He's not been seen like this before. So something about this woman is intriguing to him. And I think off the bat, for one, she has been able to spend all this money. Like, she just spent $10,000 on him. So I think she's proven that she's his equal, at least in the sense of, you know, financially. I think that when he meets her, he realizes she's a very, she's a smart, you know, socialite. She seems to be passionate about something. She has this assistant with her, so she's a businesswoman. I mean, it's almost like his equal is, you know, has just purchased him for the night and then denies him. So it's that sense of, here's someone who I actually might be compatible with, and then she's not interested in me. And I don't think he finds that very often.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is when we first see the scene, every girl in the room wants Bruce Wayne. Mm-hmm. And we see the bidding. The bidding is going up $100 at a time, goes all the way up to $1,000. She's the woman who can afford him.
Right.
Who drops the money. Mm-hmm. And it's not really about Bruce Wayne. She doesn't really care about Bruce Wayne. She is essentially Batman. You know, Bruce Wayne to Batman. She Selina Kyle to Catwoman. Bruce isn't generally interested in romantic relationships
right.
because he's got Batman. Selina probably isn't all that interested in romantic relationships because she's got Catwoman.
Right. I think you're right. And what makes him attracted to her is that because Bruce Wayne is sort of this character that he assumes. Remember how we talked before about the 3 identities, Bruce Wayne, and Batman? Mm-hmm. And since this episode is clearly going to be an episode about identities, I'll revisit that real fast. That Batman, of course, is the Dark Knight. He is avenging his parents' death. He's trying to rid the city of crime and evil, and that's his mission as Batman. Bruce Wayne is the, billionaire, sort of snobby businessman who's interested, that also is this alter ego to maintain his ability to be Batman. And then there's Bruce, who only a few people really know, Alfred, for instance, being one of those people. Bruce is his whole self. He is a person who is compassionate, who is interested in connecting with others, but does struggle with that. So I think coming back to Selina Kyle, I think in that moment, the reason why he's attracted to her is that she's not interested in Bruce Wayne, but he's not interested in Bruce Wayne either, because Bruce Wayne doesn't exist.
Right.
So it's that sense of like, this person might get me because they see past this persona. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
Okay.
A truck armed with U.S. Army hardware being chased by the police. Batman naturally causes the whole thing to wreck. And after the driver gets away via the sewer, Commissioner Gordon tells Batman,
Red Claw is in Gotham.
Really, no one knows who Red Claw is. Wah, wah. We cut to Selina in her home, maybe, I guess. I'm not sure if it's her home or if it's her office. If it's the latter, Selina's a seriously crazy cat lady because she has got a lot of cats in that place. And her assistant, Maven, seems... What I find striking is that Maven seems to know that Selina's Catwoman. She's basically Alfred for Batman. She knows she's the personal assistant. And Selina keeps alluding to her encounter with Batman. And Maven never flinches. Also, Selina keeps talking about how much she wishes she were going on the date with Batman instead of Bruce. Now,
Instead of Bruce Wayne.
You're absolutely right. On the flip side, what is Selina's fascination with the Caped Crusader?
I think we get to know her a little bit more here because as Catwoman and as Selina, her preference is Batman. I don't know if I think at this point she's learned about him. He's this, he is sometimes a myth. He's sometimes seen. I think that prior to seeing him for the first time, she probably had heard about him. But when she first saw him, she calls him magnificent.
Right.
So there's something about seeing this masked, caped crusader appear before her, and I think it's admiration. I think as Catwoman, she has her own mission, of course, to get enough funds for this wildlife preserve, but I think that she's, as both Selina and Catwoman, there's something about Batman's secrecy and mysteriousness that is really attractive to her.
I think it's worth noting that Selina doesn't seem to have those alter egos that Bruce seems to have. Selina is Selina when she purchases Bruce Wayne for a date for charity. And she's the exact same person that we see with Maven. And she is the exact same person that we see as Catwoman. She's just in disguise as Catwoman.
Right.
So I think it's interesting that Selina is pretty comfortable with herself. She doesn't have those same hang-ups that Bruce seems to have.
Well, I don't know that I would call it hang-ups. You're right about the identity fluidity, that as Catwoman and as Selina, she's virtually the same person. She's her characteristics, her personality are fairly static throughout those changes in costume. Batman is a little bit different. Batman / Bruce Wayne is a little bit different. And I think that you're right, that fluidity with Selina, so there's something a little bit more, I don't know, maybe likable about that flexibility. Whereas Batman / Bruce Wayne, you said hang-ups. I agree. I don't know about the hang-ups, but I do think that there's more rigidity in that kind of identity split.
I mean, even when
struggles with it.
For instance, we don't see him do it here in this particular episode, but we do see that even when he is in the Batcave talking to Alfred, if he's wearing the cowl, he's using the voice, which is on one hand ridiculous, but on the other hand, if that is the rigidity of from Bruce to Bruce Wayne to Batman, Batman has this voice, then I guess it makes sense.
Well, you know, it comes down to it where Bruce Wayne wants Selina, Selina wants Batman, Batman wants nobody. So it's kind of a bad formula right there.
Yeah. Ultimately, the two have to end up postponing their date because Catwoman wants to find out more about this land deal that she wanted to make as Selina. And she learns that the land is being sold off to a corporation called Multigon for a high-end resort that happens to have a military installation hidden beneath it. And this is all being run by none other than Red Claw, the woman behind Multigon. And Red Claw knows that Catwoman's there getting this information, stealing it, and she sends her guys out after her. Catwoman does manage to escape, however, using a series of tricks of the trade and tools similar to Batman's.
She has those little kitty tacks that she leaves behind her, and one of the bad guys gets all caught up in it.
Right. And she gets onto another, just barely gets onto another ledge. She's, you know, holding on for dear life. And Red Claw takes that opportunity to blow up the ledge with sort of a rocket gun, knocking Catwoman off. And Batman saves her. He does exactly what Batman does. He saves her. And how does she repay him?
She kisses him twice.
Yeah, she does.
Well, the first time was for her, and then the second time she said that's for Isis.
Is that all it was for?
Selina is Catwoman. Catwoman is Selina. They both want Batman. And they're both willing to kiss him.
Right. He willingly kisses. I think he accepts the kiss, but he stops her. He's not interested in making out. He actually tries to, he puts his hands on her mask, on her cowl, and he tries to take it off of her. It's a little bit, I don't know, that moment is a little bit aggressive because she's not really consented to that. I just want to clarify. It's not out of being romantic. It's out of wanting to know who she is.
No, let's keep the mystery.
Yeah, he wants to know her identity, which is a bit ironic given that he is so closely guarded. You would think he would respect that a little bit, maybe let the police handle it.
Yeah, but I think he sees that they are not the same. That Selina / Catwoman wants to point out that they are very similar. And he makes it very clear that they don't share that commonality.
You can't deny there's something between us.
You're right. And I'm afraid it's the law.
You know, even if there's an attraction or, you know, magnetism between them, his responsibility and his obligation, his only interest is to turn her in because that's what Batman would do.
As Batman, he is very on track, one-minded. He is that guy who simply fights crime. No interest in the women.
The reason he's Batman is not the same reason that Catwoman is Catwoman. And I think that causes some conflict there. She is willing to, you know, she certainly is going to continue to pursue this wildlife preserve and she's going to continue to steal. She's going to be this cat burglar. She doesn't mind also hanging out with Batman, making out with him, pursuing him, getting in a scuffle with him, scratching at him. You know, like this to her is consistent with who Catwoman is.
Right.
Batman is struggling with that and doesn't see that as part of what he, you know, his persona is as Batman. In fact, he's not Batman to be mysterious, subversive, or sexy. Those are the things that Catwoman is willing to be as Catwoman. He's not as flexible or fluid in his persona as Batman. And in fact, I would even say could be missing out on connections because he's so rigid with his identity as Batman. I would even say that Catwoman is almost kind of healthy in her persona as Catwoman because she's multidimensional that way. So she may have some needs that she wants to be fulfilled or wants to be expressive in a certain way. So as Catwoman, she can be seductive, more so maybe even than Selina would be. She could pursue someone like Batman. She could be, as I said, subversive and dangerous. And she finds it totally possible to have a relationship with Batman that way. And I don't know. That's not a possibility with Batman, which means for me, it seems like that's not as healthy. His rigidity as Batman is keeping him closed off, and he's losing opportunities, as I said, to connect with others.
So what you're saying, actually, I don't know, it occurs to me, you gave a talk about the psychology of cosplay and sort of the freedoms of wearing masks and being anonymous and it sort of freeing you up. Selina, we see, is always the same person, whether she's wearing the mask or not. Bruce actually becomes more rigid by wearing the mask. It doesn't so much free him up as it confines him into being this person that is very black and white. Which kind of, I don't know. I don't know if it contradicts what you were saying happens in real life, but I find that particular part fascinating.
Sure. Well, cosplay, as a lot of people know, is very different than what Catwoman and Batman are doing.
I don't know. Have you been to Dragon Con? It's not that different.
But just to be clear, cosplay is simply costume play. It's expressing your fandom through props and costumes and masks and capes and so forth. Usually people are embodying a character that's in comic books or science fiction or fantasy. So, it's not necessarily enacting or role playing per se. But for a while, research has shown that wearing helmets or masks or something that covers your face does actually impact behavior. It typically reduces inhibition. There are some studies that do show that anonymity leads to more kind of rule-breaking behavior. Nothing really antisocial, but people tend to break rules and to be a little bit less inhibited.
If the stormtroopers in Star Wars are wearing helmets, they can go after Wookiees. And
the anonymity I'm talking about is the willingness to break rules because people can't see who you are. So there are some studies where trick-or-treaters will, there'll be mirrors placed so that if there's a mirror and you see yourself, you're less likely to steal an extra piece of candy. There are a number of studies on identity and people knowing who you are and how that impacts your behavior. So that being said, a colleague of mine, Dr. Robin Rosenberg, and I were interested in learning more about cosplay because we were interested in understanding the motivations and the what would drive people to wear costumes and to be so passionate about this particular pastime. Now, being a cosplayer myself, I was intrigued to kind of understand that from my own point of view, but to also gain some awareness and even destigmatize the whole cosplay thing. So we found some interesting stuff. We surveyed just under 1,000 cosplayers from all over the world who were cosplaying at conventions, and I'm talking about superhero costumes, science fiction costumes, TV, movies, anything from Star Wars to Spider-Man to, you name it, just all sorts of different types of costumes. And interestingly, we found that this group was really diverse, that there was almost nothing people had in common, if that makes sense. There were all sorts of occupations, all sorts of ages, all sorts of different motivations. So there wasn't this like one thing that was a commonality among this group.
One thing that people often mistake online is that cosplayers are doing it for the attention. And what your study showed was that no, not all of them are doing it for the attention. They're all doing it for different reasons.
Right.
And, whatever.
Yeah, there's a lot of different motivators. And the most common reason that people cited as being involved in cosplay was actually the fun, the entertainment of it. So the enjoyment of it, So that was one of our interesting findings. But we also asked about psychological factors like introversion and extroversion. Introversion is a psychological trait. It's not a problem. It's not a disorder or a condition. Introversion is a long-standing stable trait. Some people are more introverted than others, and it's basically the inward perspective, thinking of oneself and how other people think of oneself, sort of moving inward. Whereas extroversion is moving outward, so thinking of the self and thinking of others in a more outward way. And what we found is when we asked questions about mask wearing and helmet wearing is that low extroversion, people that were more introverted, were more likely to wear a mask that covers their face or that makes them seem less identifiable.
So the introverted people preferred to wear the masks.
Well, there was this strong relationship between a preference to wear a mask and the level of introversion. So yes.
And Bruce, certainly introverted. Bruce,
I
introverted.
Think so, yeah,
Bruce Wayne, extroverted. Batman, antisocial personality disorder.
Maybe, well, no, but
one day I'll turn you. I know
So-
nothing about antisocial personality disorder, by the way, but I'm determined to make Batman fit the criteria.
I know. So yeah, so it's sort of something to think about that people certainly, especially in cosplay, people prefer to cover their faces or remain more anonymous. And it may be that they're more introverted and they don't want other people to see them. They want to, I don't want to say hide behind the mask, but put on a different persona so that people are not as aware of them.
I will say this: you know me from, certainly off the show, but you also know that I am a little bit of a mix between introverted and extroverted. I'm not necessarily comfortable being an extrovert, but I can do it. I can be extroverted in front of new people. But I spent 5 summers as Yogi Bear at a theme park in Virginia,
Wearing the Yogi Bear costume.
wearing the Yogi Bear costume, and I could do anything I wanted in that costume.
Right.
I could be someone else entirely in that costume. And I did things that I would never do in real life, especially at that time. I was in high school.
Hey, this is a kid's show.
Well, no, hey, I mean, I spent, high school was not, didn't get a lot of girls in high school. I'm a ginger. But Yogi Bear, lots of flirting, lots of
attention.
I would dance and I would just do things that I would never do in real life. And on one hand, it actually opened up that possibility for me. The reason I'm as extroverted now is because I learned that I could do that stuff as Yogi Bear. But, so I totally get the whole putting on a mask and suddenly becoming freer to do whatever you want.
Right. And when I've talked to cosplayers, sometimes they do describe it that way and say, when I'm wearing this stormtrooper outfit or when I'm wearing this armor and this mask, I feel less like myself. Like, not in a bad way, but I feel I'm less concerned about my anxieties and uncertainty and my, self-esteem. I don't have to worry about all that. I can just be this other person. And so I'm more confident. I'm more outgoing. I'm sometimes more subversive. I'm a little bit more, the inhibitions are lower. So I think, yeah, that's probably a very common experience. When it comes to Catwoman and Batman, it seems to be operating in a different way. Catwoman, for some reason, seems to be more expressive. Catwoman certainly seems to be expressive and willing to connect and wanting to connect with him in romantic ways. She's very expressive and outgoing as Selina too. So I wonder.
I get the sense that if Selina had been who Batman rescued, Selina would have kissed him too. Like it wouldn't.
Oh yeah,
have been...
she would have jumped his bones.
Yeah. So really, the only thing keeping anything from really happening on that rooftop is the fact that Selina needs to keep on the Catwoman outfit in order to not be caught by the law enforcer that is Batman.
Right. Well, and Batman's rigidity, not that rigidity, Batman's need to...
Well, not that need.
No. Well, you know what I'm saying.
Batman doesn't have that need. No, I totally get it.
We also actually asked some questions about gender and sort of choice of costume in this cosplay study, and what we found is that gender was a predictor of whether someone chose characters that are considered more seductive than they consider themselves to be. Being a female cosplayer was related to choosing a more seductive costume, as I said, and
which I also find interesting because we see a lot of women cosplaying as Catwoman.
That's true.
Lots of Catwoman cosplayers. So a lot of people want to be this woman that is very sure of herself, has the whip, has the, agility and the sleek cat-like movements and all of that. So
am I losing you? Are you still here?
Still here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and a lot of people choose to be male characters like Batman, and I still think they're going after the same things. They also want to be empowered. They also want to feel heroic. One could argue those are the masculine qualities that maybe a lot of male cosplayers want to embody.
Maybe Batman cosplayers want to be sexy to the Catwoman cosplayers. Like, maybe they want to feel heroic, sure, whatever. But what they really want is to hook up with some Catwomen because they know that the Bat costume is what's going to get them.
Right. But then they have to, be standoffish and run away.
To anyone but Catwoman. Yes.
Including Catwoman.
Yeah. Yeah. If they have a piece of evidence that they want to go put into the Bat computer. Look, if there's one thing that we learned from this episode, it's...
Never trifle with the affections of a woman. Until next time.
And there will be a next time.
Yes, there will. And that will be next week. Till then, come follow us on Twitter. We're at Arkham Sessions. Drea, who are you on Twitter?
At Arkham Asylum Doc.
And I'm at bward028. You should also come like us on Facebook. Just look up The Arkham Sessions. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or praise, you can always email us at arkhamsessions@gmail.com. Also, if you're listening on iTunes or any other place where you listen to your fine podcasts, please be sure to rate the show and give us your reviews. We pay attention, so let us know what you think.
If you're interested in finding out more about the cosplay study, there were actually a couple of studies that I ran, and one of them is published online now. You can go to my website, underthemaskonline.com, and just link on further analysis, and Expressions of Fandom is the name of the article, and it's listed there.
Cool. So, until next week, I'm Brian Ward.
I'm Dr. Andrea Letamendi.
And we are...
The Arkham Sessions.
and that was Phoenix Jones.
Oh, yes.
The real life vigilante, costumed vigilante, who must have been influenced by Batman in some way,
but see,
right?
that I don't know. That's kind of an assumption. I know his costume is a bit Dark Knight-ish, but I don't know if I've ever heard him in interviews say that Batman is the one who's influenced him to patrol the streets and take justice into his own hands.
We're going to take a look. We're going to find it. We're going to see.
All right.
So let's get to The Cat in the Claw, Part 1. This was an episode written by Jules Dennis and Richard Mueller from a story by Sean Catherine Derrick and Laren Bright, and it was directed by Kevin Altieri. It first aired on September 5th, 1992. And this episode introduces us to two characters, Catwoman and the Red Claw. Now, Catwoman we all know and love. Selina Kyle, introduced in 1940 with Batman #1. At the time, she was simply known as the Cat. And she was your typical run-of-the-mill cat burglar. You're going to like what you hear for sure. Andrea, I also recently saw that you were quoted in an article on CNN.com.
That's right. So, of course, this is the 75th year anniversary of Batman. So, of course, DC Comics and some news outlets are celebrating as well. And CNN recently posted a story about the influence of Batman and how Batman and his story has stood the test of time. And I was interviewed and asked about why I thought Batman is relatable and has impacted so many people and continues to be an important character, if you will, in our culture. So if you're interested, I do talk about the psychology of Batman and how Batman's origin story is important in our ability to relate and identify with him. And it's a really great piece. So you can find that on CNN.com.
There's only one person that I thought was missing from that article. In her first story, she was after a diamond necklace worth $500,000, if I remember correctly. And she's disguised as an old woman. Once Batman figures her out, he removes the old lady makeup in a pretty hilarious panel, actually. I'm sure you've seen it. It's him rubbing her face, and she says something like, let go of me or get off of me. And Batman classically responds, quiet or Papa Spank?
No.
Things have changed. 75 years of Batman.
Yeah, 1940. The good old days, right?
Yeah.
So that was Catwoman's introduction in the books, and her character actually did pretty well until about 1954 when she sort of disappeared, mostly due to the Comics Code Authority. And, they were very picky about the representation of women in comics. So you didn't see as much Catwoman after that. But her character really came back with a vengeance with the 1960s. Not only that, we're being regularly emailed and tweeted about how your analysis in particular of these characters is helping people grasp these real-life states of mind and, in some cases, disorders, whether it's for them or family members or friends. And
yeah, that's, I think for me, that's what matters. So I do sometimes pay attention to the numbers of downloads and listens, and I know that's important to make sure we keep going, but I do like to get the Twitter messages and the emails from the website, asking questions, talking about how the show has helped them, and generally just sort of giving feedback about the impact that the show has. So that's been great.
Yeah, because ultimately the whole point of this show is really to help people understand better, mental health. And, I enjoy getting that kind of feedback. It, makes me feel good. So we've got a lot more to discuss in these coming episodes. So definitely stick around. Welcome to the Arkham Sessions. I'm Brian Ward.
I'm Dr. Andrea Letamendi.
Andrea, congratulations.
Thank you.
We've just come off of not only the biggest week in the show's history, but also the biggest month so far. And last week, we also scored our 10,000th download.
Woohoo! What does that mean? I have no idea.
That means we're gaining a lot of new listeners, but more importantly, they're actually enjoying the show enough to listen to multiple episodes. So there are a lot of people interested in what makes Batman and his villains tick. And